Hello, good evening, and welcome to tonight's Now debate. I'm hoping you guys can see us okay, because for some reason, when I've got the screen up here on YouTube, and I apologise for this, both Richard and Anne, who are joining us tonight. I can only see, what's happened by here? Oh my god. Well, can one of you guys go and find the stream on the phone, please, and just check for me that people can see us?
Stream is live. I can see it.
Can you see? Can you see the full screen? Because all I've got here is the top right hand corner.
I can see the full screen.
You can see the full screen, can you?
Yep.
Right, sorry about that, guys. For some reason, when YouTube on the back end is showing me, it's only showing me, so I can only see the top of my head. I have no idea what's happened there. Must be a glitch on YouTube's end. But you go live on your phones, guys, and you can actually see it. You can see all of us. You should be able to see myself, Richard, and Anne. Is that right? Can we see see everyone? Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Getting confirmation from the chat that people can see you on their iPad.
Oh, excellent. Thank you. Sorry, guys. I apologise for the bit of a weird start there. Anyway, welcome to tonight's Now debate. I'm Jared Walters, along with my savagely beautiful partner in crime, wonderful in every way as far as paranormal is concerned, Mr. Richard Oliver, and obviously our code expert, correspondent from the States, Jessie Ann Nichols-George, who has kindly once again joined us to go through some of the absolute craziness that's been going on in the world right now. And we're starting to see some of this stuff coming to fruition, reaching a boiling point and causing a little bit of concern for people where we are. So the point of tonight's session is to have a bit of a free-flowing discussion as to everything that's going on. We're going to bring in some of the stuff from the recent video we put out on Sunday about the Councillor 12 messages we've had from the 3rd of October and the 1st of November, which you guys would have seen had you been, if you have been following our channel. I will link to them in the description below after tonight's show, but we will show some of those sessions tonight anyway. Richard, Anne, how are you guys?
Good.
I'm doing pretty good.
It was trepidation there, Anne.
Well, it's kind of like that. We were talking before the show, and so people know it's like I feel like I'm a little bit split personality these days, because what's good is really good and what's challenging is really challenging. So
yeah, that's kind of where it is. Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
I feel exactly the same. The information that's coming out now in the world, I tell you, I find myself, I've been sharing a lot of this guy on TikTok, and it's called Head Wobble. And every time he says something at the end of it, he says, give your head a wobble. And that's what I just feel like screaming. I feel like just going outside and screaming, give your head a wobble. But, as with YouTube and everything else now at the moment, because they're part of the censor police. So you got to be careful what you say.
Just want to give a couple of announcements. First of all, I'd like to say two things, basically. First thing is, on the Monday video, we did promise a BitChute video that was the full unedited version of the conversation. We are not very comfortable putting that conversation up on YouTube because of how strict the guidelines are at the moment. But we decided to put it on BitChute. Unfortunately, that video hasn't processed properly, and we will have to upload it again. So I know a couple of you guys have gone over to our BitChute channel and subscribed, so thank you for that. But I just want to say that video will come up. It's just we're very new to the platform, and for some reason when we uploaded that video, it didn't go that well. Secondly, I wanted to say a shout out and a thank you to Lainey and Ben for sharing a wonderful video that on their Facebook and TikTok last night of a transcription we did of a couple of EVPs. So I just wanted to publicly say thank you to you guys for sharing it, and it was an absolute pleasure to be able to transcribe that session. I just wanted to sort of drop that in there as a couple of announcements. Richard, do you have any announcements that you would like to give before we get into the meat of tonight's show?
No, not really. I think we'll cover it in the show. It's like I said, it's a bit. Oh, there's such a divide out there at the moment with anything, and I think you just, we're just treading on eggshells all the time. If you stand, if you say there's something wrong, then you're on the side of danger and causing harm. And if you believe the narrative, then you're gonna get in some serious harm, because you're living in a perpetual sense of fear, dread, and isolation. So I mean, you can't really. It's really difficult at the moment to say anything on it, to be honest with you. It's really difficult.
Well, I wanted to focus on maybe some of the... That's why I put on the thumbnail, Rise Above Fear. Because I'm glad that that's kind of come into the fact what you said about the being... the sort of the opposing energies then, I suppose. That are happening at the moment. And... I think we'll go into that. Anne, how are you? Have you got anything that you would like to get off your chest before we go into looking into what you predicted for January and comes through the codes and what's actually happened? Because it's going to be a bit of a lengthy process of going through what actually happened.
Yeah, as you say, I mean, it's like these days and times we just have so much going on and so much happening on a day-to-day basis that it's just, I can't, every day I sit back and I kind of think, I can't believe they've actually said this or they've done that, or these people are, making these choices. And there's so much in the codes that are really helpful, I think, in this process. But, as Richard said, sitting in these strange spaces where I never thought, for example, I would be deemed as a terrorist. My work is rooted in compassion, but I'm deemed a terrorist by today's standards. And it's kind of, it's just such a strange feeling, because it's like literally these two worlds that are existing simultaneously. And, on one hand, I'm very excited because I'm seeing these new faces come along and people are excited about the Code Journey work and it's making sense for them. And for those that aren't familiar, by the way, I'll get my little plug in here.
Yep,
of the
absolutely.
book. And this is the 2021 book. I put one of these out every single year. Huge book, helping people know what's going on and to make sense out of some of this craziness. And so like here in the States, I mean, technically it's at a point, not that they're enforcing it yet, but I don't know how far away they would be from enforcing it. But technically I could be deemed as a terrorist for going against the narrative, for speaking the truth, for posting the Lord's Prayer, for God's sake. That got fact-checked the other day on my timeline.
The Lord's Prayer got fact-checked on your timeline?
The Lord's Prayer got fact-checked on my Facebook timeline the other day.
What did they fact-check?
But yeah, I mean...
Who did they ask God?
Yeah, well, apparently God doesn't exist in their world, or... it was something about... it was something to the effect of... Facebook is not against the Lord's Prayer or fact-checking people about the Lord's Prayer. Some weird thing like that. And so a friend of mine tested it, and she posted the Lord's Prayer. She didn't get fact-checked, and I said, you see what targeting is about? I'm being targeted. I get fact-checked. I get dinged. You post the same prayer and nothing, so... but it's kind of good
Cliff
for
Richard
people
must be spinning in his grave.
This irony that got fact checked.
It's just ridiculous. The Lord's Prayer, come on. We used to have assemblies in school, and we'd say it like every morning. It's probably it's the most well-known prayer that is. This is when you look into. I was going through my filing cabinet the other day, and I found, to my absolute amazement, actually, that I actually own a copy of The Three Waves of Volunteers by Dolores Cannon. I thought I only had a digital copy, but I actually do have a physical copy of that book, and it talks about like a time when it will feel like that we're in two worlds, and it very much feels like that at the moment, as if there's a real sort of feeling of being in sort of two different paradigms or two different sort of ways of looking at the world, and it feels like the majority are kind of caught in between on this. And I've noticed that people that I wouldn't think about asking questions actually asking these questions, and it's like we'll get into this a little bit later on, but the fact of the matter is like there was a lot of things in January that people were expecting to happen that didn't, and there was, whichever way this looks, I think the way in which the election went down was a lot of people are feeling like it was a big kick in the stomach. It was a big kick in the gonads, so to speak. And I'm hearing things from like the South will rise again, and different to the fact of like all these different crazy things that are happening. But in order to give a bit of context, shall we go through some of the things that we have seen in January compared to what you said about what was happening, what was in the codes?
Let's do it.
Right, this is going to take a slight while, guys, so I'm going to put the screen on Richard and Anne. Rich, I got to admit, I was going through Anne's video today, and you absolutely made me laugh out loud. A little subtle thing that you did. We were talking about the storm that we had in late December, and I made a joke about you storm chasing, and I was like, I'm not going to name names, someone was storm chasing, and you just looked around as if to say, ooh, what? There's little subtle things that you put into brilliant, but it's every time I watch the video, I'm like, when we cut, because obviously at the time, because I'm producing the show and speaking at the same time, I miss little things. So when I watch the videos back and those little sort of subtle nuances you put in there, are just gold, but they are just gold.
Yeah, but I bet people think I'm bonkers.
Yeah, well, I think we know you're bonkers. And I've had to do this slightly differently because there's literally so much, right? You basically said about there's going to be a lot of people with cloudy minds and finding it very, very hard to think straight throughout the first couple of weeks of January. From a personal point of view, I can definitely attest to that. Actually getting going this year, there was a lot of things that sort of came up on a personal front, and it was very, very difficult to get going into this year, and it wasn't, I think, until after the 20th when things started to sort of subside, that things we kind of were able to sort of move forward a little bit. A lot of this has happened basically within the last 2 weeks, but like you said, there'll be a lot of public upheaval, a choice between violence and a choice between peaceful ways of changing things. Now, obviously, the biggest thing that would have caught most news outlets in this month would have been the Capitol Hill riot that took place on the very day that we were doing the last Now debate together. You also said about there being small sort of victories. Italy and I think some other places have now started reopening and coming out of the lockdowns, which I know, Richard, you've been heavily following. We have had. You also said we're going to see a lot of sort of falling in corruption and a lot of exposing of corruption. Now, we didn't see it in America, but we've definitely seen it in several other countries in the world, where we've had the Italian Prime Minister has had to resign. The German Chancellor, Angela Merkel, has announced that she's stepping down. The Dutch government has basically had to resign under the child benefit scandal. The Estonian government has collapsed or has gone into some huge trouble. I have got links for these. I will add these to the description below once we finish tonight's show. You also said there will be a lot illuminating about money, about the way in which... Now, this was really, really interesting because the UK government have announced that they lost $3 billion in funds managing the COVID crisis, and there's been legal action taken over that. It's announced today that Amazon CEO Jeff Bezos is to step down this year. And the biggest thing that's to happen, which I thought was quite interesting, with what you said about people seeing how the money system is manipulated, and that's with Gamestop. Now, Gamestop is a huge video game retailer in the US, and basically a hedge fund, I don't know the full ins and outs. Again, I've got the article here, but GameStop, apparently a lot of one of the big hedge funders was trying to crash the stock, and a lot of very small investors put in little bits of money, which made the stock absolutely go skyrocket. And this has happened with several other companies, and it's created a disarray in the stock market because these billionaires are putting stops on stocks and shares being sold, and people are seeing how the market is not a free market anymore. You also said about different countries looking at the vaccine and how that's going to be and how that's being distributed and rolled out. Now, one of the huge things that we've had, apparently Britain has had quite a successful trial. Think of that, successful rollout so far. Think of that what you will. I'm not going to get into that debate at this particular moment. If you want to bring that up later, we can. But there's been a massive row with the EU because the EU have basically gotten hardly anywhere with theirs, and Britain basically had the blame. Now, a lot of the issue with that was this is all to do with the Pfizer vaccine. Now, I have been told and found from some sources that in America, a lot of the Pfizer ones went to waste because they were being held back until Biden got inaugurated so he could take the credit rather than Trump. I don't know if there's any truth to that. But what I found quite interesting is with the one that's made in the UK, the Astrozenica vaccine, they don't actually export the vaccine. They provide the patent so they can make it in their own countries. So there's been a massive row surrounding the vaccine rollout between Britain and Europe lately, which has been in the news. People reaching their breaking point. There's been huge protests around the world. You've had protests in Russia after the Nalvani jail sentencing, the reporter over there. You've had the farmers' protests in England, in India. No, in England, unfortunately. We've had the farmer protests in India. You've had mass protests in Turkey. You've had protests of Amazon warehouses in France because of working conditions. We've had mass protests, and sadly some really bad riots in the Netherlands. You also said about looking at the breakthroughs and looking at who's speaking out about certain things. Now, Elon Musk, I've noticed, as much as I've criticised Elon Musk, he has spoke out about a few things this month. This one particularly, he's speaking out in support of decentralised currency with regards to Bitcoin. But there are other things I know that he has spoken out against this month. I think you drew my attention to that, Richard. Apparently, again, I have put in there as well, because it came out today, whether you want to consider it a breakthrough or not. Time will tell, basically. But apparently, there's very encouraging results coming through from this AstraZeneca vaccine, which means that UK may be lifting its restrictions sooner rather than later. think of that what you will. And I don't want to get into sort of too much sort of around that. It was just the fact that I searched certain keywords from that, and that they are things that come up. Breakthroughs with regards. The problem is when you said about the breakthroughs, it's like we discussed in previous code videos, where a lot of the breakthroughs are very, very seldom advertised, because breakthroughs means that the drama is over, and obviously the news media don't want to report when drama is over, because that's not really newsworthy. It doesn't sell papers and it's not exciting. So if there's any breakthroughs that you guys have seen this month that you want to sort of raise attention to, then please do. Keep an eye on the Middle East. Well, as again, since Biden has been inaugurated, there is growing tensions with Iran, and I've noticed there's a lot of talk about troop movements in Syria as well, whether or not he is going to send troops back to Syria. And then we come to America. And you said about seeing about things being shown, right? And I made this observation of, you had a group of people, celebrities and politicians of questionable values, stood on the steps of a building surrounded by 25,000 troops and a giant steel cage that would put a wrestler to shame, talking about love and unity. Biden has signed, on his first day of inauguration, signed 17 executive orders, and obviously we've got the Trump impeachment, which Trump has now launched his legal defence. His legal defence, as the best as I can tell, is to say that the impeachment is unconstitutional, and if they do decide to go ahead with a trial, one of the things that they are talking about doing is bringing in the FBI as witnesses to say that they knew planning was going on, so why wasn't Trump informed about the planning that was taking place? He was at the time President of the United States. You also got Florida governor is speaking out against big tech, and he's basically putting forward provisions regarding the censorship. Now, we have seen a lot of huge things, and you did say about technology. We have seen a large migration of people coming off the mainstream social networks, going over to places like Library, BitChute. We also saw the taking down of Parler. So we've seen this massive clampdown and massive monopolizing move by Google, because they have quietly been taken down. Obviously, Parler was in the public domain, but they've also quietly been taken down other video streaming competitors off the Play Store. So sites like Library no longer have apps on the Play Store because they are in direct competition with YouTube. And I'm saying the official excuse is they are breaking community guidelines. I'm sorry, but that has nothing to do with community guidelines. I can understand it with BitChute, because as much as BitChute is kind of good, I do think with BitChute they are kind of shooting themselves in the foot, because they're concentrating mostly on the sort of alternative media, and I think that they do need to broaden their perspective a little bit. But that's just my personal take on BitChute as a platform itself. I can see, if you're not really into the politics and things, and you went on BitChute as a hosting platform, you will probably get deterred by some of the things that are on the front page. But a lot of people are migrating over to BitChute. And I'm not just talking about people who have been thrown off YouTube because of their points of view, and etc. etc. I'm more talking about, other outlets, more official outlets are starting to get a representation on BitChute as well. So it feels as if some of these competitors now are starting to get a bit of traction. And there has been questions raised as of today regarding voter irregularities with regards to the Democrat voter registration. I'm also getting very worrying reports coming out of the States about, though they say that the troops, National Guard, and this is from Fox News, so I don't actually know how truthful this is, but apparently because it was supposed that the troops would move out of Washington after the inauguration, but apparently more and more are coming in. And when Fox News reached out, they said because they are policing against harmful ideologies or something to that effect. I don't know if you can sort of raise some awareness of this. Obviously, you know, I'm gonna throw the floor open because before I make any further points, I want to throw the floor open to you guys and let me, you know, is there anything else that you can add to that you know, that's the breakdown I have found in the last couple of hours of researching. Any other developments, maybe some breakthroughs that have happened or whatever. Throwing the floor open.
I'm going to say a breakthrough that I'm noticing is happening out in California here in the States, and that is connected to a recall on Governor Newsom out there. Governor Newsom, excuse me. And they're just about have all of the signatures that they need to recall him. And this would be huge because Newsom is connected to Pelosi and connected to several other people. Those are family connections there, so to say. And he's been a pretty big stronghold, almost as much as Cuomo has been, in regards to the restrictions and implementing the heavy structures and dictator-style aspects, doing rolling blackouts there on a regular basis and limiting water and, I mean, just basic necessities on people out there. And he's lost the support of the police, and the police are refusing to enforce some of the lockdown structures. And of course, you know, as soon as Biden was allegedly put into office, they they all started to open up again. I mean, it's very odd. You want to tell me that, you know, on the 20th it was not okay to open up, but on the 21st it suddenly was. But I think this is a breakthrough because to be able to put somebody like Gavin Newsom out of office is going to be a big statement and a big breakthrough of getting into that corruption and starting to say, look, you can be taken out of office. You're not just guaranteed a position here. And so I would say that's one of the big breakthroughs that I see happening, because that's going to set a precedence. There's just more and more people starting to speak up and express their voice in things. And I think that that's good. It's going to be interesting. You talked about the shifts of the platforms going on. And yes, I think for a while what we are going to see is we are going to see a lot of people that have maybe been considered the conspiracy theorist or, you know, have been censored or things like that. But I think these alternative platforms are actually going to grow quite a bit. And we're going to see more mainstream people coming into them, more spiritual people coming into them, things like that, because they are going to see what's happening. So I think there's so much that we can get into in some ways in this show, just because there is a lot of different components and pieces at play here. I think a lot of people have been very discouraged by what their eyes have been seeing. And what I have to say to people is realize there is so much that we're not being shown. There's so much now where they really do want you to see just the narrative that they want you to see. And, you know, this is kind of like being 50 years old and your parents are still telling you what you can and cannot watch. It's a very similar piece to that. And I think that we need to realize that there's a lot more happening beneath the surface. So even though a lot of things are being allowed to play out, it doesn't necessarily mean that things are going the direction they appear to be going. Like, it's very easy for people to get discouraged right now. It's very easy for people to say, I should just give up on this hope. It's very easy for people to say, I'm frustrated with this process. I'm not seeing anything happening. But I think we will have things happening. I think they are happening. I think the timing of things coming out, I think, actually not having Trump on the forefront right now is a good thing, because now they're starting to turn on each other. Now they're starting to make these unwise choices. Now people can look at Biden and these other people for what they're really doing and not just be able to scapegoat it all onto Trump.
You don't know where you got this gone, basically.
Right. And we're seeing a lot of people that are saying, I thought Biden was going to do this, and I thought Biden was going to do that. And of course, we've been saying he wasn't going to. And yet, now they're kind of coming back saying, well, I didn't realize he wasn't going to do this. I didn't realize he was going to cut, 100,000 jobs. I didn't realize that, now I have to share my stimulus check with, people that aren't even legal in our country. I didn't realize, so we're seeing this kind of Biden's remorse, voter remorse thing happening. And it's such a good lesson for us to realize how much our hate, or how much our distortions, how much the lies that we buy into can blind us. And now we're going to have to come out of some of that.
I want to make a point, but before I do, Rich, is there anything you'd like to add before I make the point?
No, I think Jersey summed it up pretty well. Like, you get what you're given, don't you? I mean, they vilified Trump to the maximum they could. They really did. And, this is, I was saying there, everyone within our little community was saying the same. We were all singing from the same sheet. And, it's happened. Exactly what we said was going to happen has happened. So, I don't know what to say. It's not. I don't like the thought of saying "we told you so," but it is.
I don't think it's a case of saying "you told you so." I think it's like there's people kind of sometimes, and I want to draw attention to the session that you did, and it said about I won't, because we're live. I'm a bit afraid to sort of say the name of the movement, but a certain movement obviously give people hope. And that didn't materialise. But what I find troubling, and it's the same thing, I made this point before, same thing we had at our election with Jeremy Corbyn, is a lot of people put their efforts and they put their hope behind one particular outcome. And what people failed to really see is the efforts that were putting in about what they felt was right and just and fair, whether with the people who are putting in things which are right and just and fair, right? I'm not talking about the people who want to cause harm in any way. That comes from inside you. That comes from inside you as a person. It's just that you see that other person or that person in power as a representation of that. And there's when I look back of the last few years, or the last 7 years we've been doing this, and we use these terms like spiritual awakening, humanity awakening, and that sort of thing. A lot of it has been happening underneath the surface without people realising it. The amount of people that have had to become more informed, and I'm not just talking about politics or world events or even things that are in the news, more informed and more empowered about things that are happening in their own lives, that they've had to have more information to sort of be able to do certain things. It's like, back when, my father's generation, for example, you went down the pit or you worked in industry, and that's basically where you worked for a lot of your life. you might go from one job to another, but you basically work on that level. Now, a lot of people in the last 10 years, a lot more people have gone down the entrepreneurial route and have started to really sort of like find things out for themselves, find bits of information out. And we've mentioned this plenty of times before when the three of us have met on this channel. So it's not even just on a sort of world news event. This is happening on every single possible level of our lives, and you know, we are facing fears, we are facing differences in belief and disputes and arguments and things like that, and obviously the sort of oppressive energies of everyone, you know, feeling scared of what they're seeing, of what's going on. It's like that reel of news stories, you know, those, any one of them would be big news most years pre sort of 2019. Any one of them would be like the big event that we all look back on in that year as being like one of the big sort of defining events, and we're literally only in January, and it's like you know, this change is taking place because I think on a physical level it's a response to the change that's happened within our world in the last 20 years. The fact that we've become more connected, the fact that we're starting to see, you know, other ways of working, of making an income, and actually being able to work and spend time with our families and different things like that. You know, there's this whole sort of ethos of change that's taken place, especially, you know, since probably the 2008 crash. I've probably seen that change a lot more since then. A rise in things like social enterprises and sort of that sort of thing as well. So and I think one of the things that's happening with regards to with regards to this as well is what's happened over the last year has caused people to fear the loss of control over their own lives. And, you know, a lot of people have been really, really frightened. And it takes something to sort of say, well, this is a situation that we're in, but it doesn't mean you can't thrive in that situation. And you can't, there's, you know, the more people that actually sort of start to sort of look out for those around them, look out for each other, you know, we can change the course of this naturally. And Rich, me and you have spoke about this on the channel plenty of times before.
Well, yeah, but it's, you know, I from my end, I'm finding a lot of people just sort of changing their mind. And I mean, we've had that discussion, you know, when with in between Biden and Trump, and you thought we were backing the wrong horse. I think the problem is there's so much information with social media now, you can quite easily get so confused, and I think you can be trapped. And I think it's going to take more than just people looking for information, because they're taking the information. I mean, with the Cox postulate or whatever it's called, in regards to the vaccine, they've had it. Google have just made it exactly. If you actually Google that, the first thing that's going to come up is COVID. So, you know, the information, like with the thing you were talking about earlier, Jazz, you know, the thing that was giving people hope, which they've taken down. Mm-hmm. They could have influenced that, because the way I looked at it didn't make any sense. I said this on the show many times, and I think the information is being manipulated on both sides.
Yeah,
and you know, it's you've got to look for actions. Yes. I think you've got to look for actions. You know, politicians, right? Our Prime Minister Boris did it the other day, and he talked about Brexit. And he said, under no circumstances would these certain measures come into fruition. And they did. So I put a post up yesterday. I said, I'm sharing this because I want you to look at how easily he lied. He knew that wasn't the case, and he lied so easily. I mean, I've done things like over the years. I'm fascinated by psychology and watching people, and people have tells, and people do certain things when they lie, and he didn't even have a tell, but he lied, and he just lied so easily. And these politicians, they trained to lie. And people who lie for a living don't all of a sudden just tell the truth. So if they can lie, and they can lie about anything, and this is what
I was more talking about
in their minds.
Yeah, that's what I was kind of saying. I'm on about the choices I'm on about the average person, the choices the average person can make. Obviously it's not true for everyone, but there are ways I've noticed that I've thrived throughout this. There are ways that people around me have thrived throughout this, because you've got two options. You can either let it take you down and let the fear get the better of you, or you can thrive through it. And that's kind of where the battle kind of takes place. As you said, it's through action, but it's also about us taking actions within our own life as well. And taking actions in regards to our values and what we think is fair and just basically.
Well, and it's interesting because in my last Connecting Codes video that I did just within the last week here, and I really brought out, I think one of the things that has really hit people in their frustration and feeling let down and things like this is they built up these big dramatic scenes and events.
Yeah.
And instead of just looking at the facts of what was really happening, and I actually took one of the posts and that had been coming back up again recently and broke it down and showed how it actually had played out. It actually did go through it just didn't happen in the blatant, in people's face, big dramatic way that they thought it should happen. And I think this is a really big piece for people to keep in mind and to remember, because they've been expecting these big dramatic pieces, and actually a lot of stuff is happening. And we know that Trump is not done. We know that the whole corruption area is sitting on the edge. But even in the codes talk about between now through about the middle of May how important choices are. Our choices are absolutely huge right now. Our associations are absolutely huge right now. And we have these energy currents both within the month and within this period of time of a few months here, that our associations are going to maybe make or break us a little bit. We have to be careful that we're surrounding ourselves with people with that are making wise choices. And that doesn't mean just somebody who maybe is trying to promote the truth, but actually are making wise choices in their life. They're finding that balance between being aware of the worst case scenario, hoping for the best, and living kind of somewhere in that middle where they're not living consumed by the fear, even though they know all of the pieces maybe that are at play, but also not foolishly living in the hopes to the point that they're placing themselves in danger as well. So we have to find these middle grounds. I think this whole process, and I think that this really, the movement that you two were referring to, I think that it played out as far as it was supposed to play out. I don't think that it was necessarily intended to go on forever and ever and ever. I think that it was an operation to bring a certain amount of awakening, to stimulate people to do research and things, to be aware and pay attention to all of these subtle ways which the lies and the manipulation and these things come about, and to remind people that you have power within you. You have the power through your choice, and I've said this many times on many shows in many of my videos, to influence things. And we saw that, Jared, as you recently just mentioned earlier in the show, with the Gamestop.
Yeah, definitely.
People realizing, look, we have power to influence it.
Yeah.
There might be billionaires out there, but you know what? We could bankrupt the billionaires in a couple of days by doing something like this. I mean,
Joe,
it doesn't take much.
When I seen that, I was like, wow. I was like, that made me go wow, because it's like, and there's another link I found as well. It's like people are using different ways of sort of showing their protest whilst adhering to the lockdown restrictions. And it's that's the thing. It's like, it does take sort of creativity, and it takes, that's my point. It's like, what I tend to do personally is, I know, and me and Richard spoke about this, I do believe there is something out there, and I do believe, because I've had people who've been affected by it. But what I tend to do is be aware of what's happening in the news. I only give it a set amount of time per day, so maybe a half hour or something, to check, unless obviously something comes up and I have to research it for the channel. And what I do is I build routines, and I build certain routines around my life that have helped to empower me to not think about and not let it get on top of me every single day, because I think there is that kind of energy surrounding it. And I found this surrounding inauguration. There was so much focus on this big thing happening that it kind of overwhelmed people a little bit, and there was such polarization surrounding it that it almost like took a life of its own on. And I thought that, like I said to you guys when we spoke about it before, that doesn't help. That's not. And you had some alternative researchers saying, oh yeah, I had a videotape of the inauguration like 7 o'clock this morning, and things like, it's like, okay, you might have. I'm not saying you have, or I'm not saying you haven't, but how has that helped? It's on both, as Richard has said, I've seen people on the other side that seem to be like promoting false hope. And that I struggle with, because as what the Gamestop thing proved, is that people, once they participate in the process, it's much harder to manipulate and lie to them. And I've said this from the start: if there was an active participation between those who, for those of us who knew, if they had to take us into a lockdown, for example, like. When this broke last year, we're on an island in the UK. If they shut the borders for a month or two and basically said, right, we're going to need to shut everything down because this deadly virus is coming in, blah, 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 and they'd done it that way, you probably would have been out of it. But then you had all this weird stuff like Eat Out to Help Out, and you had all the sort of reverse and U-turns on decisions, going back to the sort of, what's his name? The comedian who did, using Doctor Who, the comedian who did that sort of impression of Boris last year. This is where there's a lot of people, I don't know whether this, because there's so much information like what you said, Rich, or if it's just, there's so much of it that just doesn't sort of feel particularly, it just feels overwhelming, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, what do you see coming on? What do you see coming with the codes and everything else? What do you see this sort of coming next?
Yeah, I want to comment just a little bit on what Jared was saying, in the aspects that it's so important when people are taking in information, because you have the truth out there, you have the narrative out there, you have the distortions, the lies, the manipulation, and you have the people that are deliberately trying to appear to be giving the truth that are actually the liars and the manipulators trying to tear down the truth. And so what happens in this whole process is that we get a lot of people starting to speculate. And that's where we get into trouble, someplace. Like the EOs are all posted on, EOs, the executive orders here in the United States, they're all posted on the government website. Yeah. And so you can go in and verify that. So for example, and there's all this word that for example, Biden has signed like 70 executive orders. Well, right now, as of an hour or so before this show, there's only 25 that are actually on the site. Now, I'm sure he's signed a lot more. They just haven't put them on the site because they've been slow putting them up there. But these are the things that look to be able to verify it with concrete proof. Being able to really sit and observe and say, well, has maybe this played out and it didn't happen as big of a way as we had hoped or thought. We're in this period of time over the next few months, and here in the United States for codes, we are in really critical energy right now. We're dealing with really nasty black magic, illusory type of energy, but it's also creative energy. And we have to look at those possibilities and say, okay, right now the codes are calling during this period of time to get into the soul self. You've got to place the spiritual first. And when we're placing the spiritual first, that means human kindness first. That means compassion first. That means caring about people as people. It means unifying instead of staying in this division. If we can't get to a point where we're placing that first, we're creating our own destruction. And this is something that comes up a lot in the February codes of the corruption creating its own destruction. It's going to go into a very self-destructive process because it doesn't have the scapegoats there anymore. It's going to start turning on itself. But jumping back just a moment here in the United States, our Independence Day happens on July 4th. And when July 4th rolls around this year, we're going to hit a critical 1-year period. So people have heard me talk about the aspect that we're in this 4 to 5 year period challenge before. And here in the United States, we actually don't have that 4 to 5 year period. We're really going to enter a period where, come June, and we'll talk about this more as that time comes around, or July, that we're going to hit a do or die situation. We're either going to fly and break through, or we are going to collapse and break down. And as everybody knows, what happens here, we're the last piece standing in the way that can bring this corruption down. So when we look at these pieces, these are things where people are going to have to start getting their priorities straight. We're going to have to put the arguments aside. We're going to have to stop looking at things just in the perspective of money. And we're going to have to realize that so many things are being presented to us as truths, and they're not truths. They're full of lies. And when you get down and you start doing the research, you find the lies that are there. We've been fed lies for decades and decades and decades. And it's very hard to look at this, but when we stand in spirit, we can feel it in ourselves. We can open these pieces up and we can go from there. Now, one of the things that I think you guys are going to find very interesting that's coming up in the codes is there's a couple of things. We're entering in February. We're really coming into a period that is about the soul versus materialism. So this is going to be a big decision-making process that's going to weigh very heavily, again, into the direction that we're going, the outcomes that we start creating. We're going to need to pay a lot of attention to weather, because the really nasty weather is going to start hitting where there's corruption. So instead of sitting down going, oh, all this nasty weather is going to come about and we're going to have storm after storm tearing buildings down, right? That would be like feeding into speculation. What we want to do is we want to say, okay, where did a storm just hit, or where is a storm hitting? And then look at who's sitting there. That storm is actually probably going to give us an indication. If somebody's gone off the radar, like, I don't know, let's just say, Biden's son Hunter goes off the radar, right? And all of a sudden a storm hits New York. Well, maybe he's at that child trafficking, compound in New York, in upstate New York, where he's been proven to be found before, right? So these are the things we want to pay attention to the weather hits, because the weather is going to give us some really interesting pieces. And I've done this in some of my videos in the past, and I've looked at, here's a storm hitting, or here's an uprising and great white sharks showing up in an area, and they're doing deadly attacks, and that's not normal for that area or that pattern. So that's going to be an indication. But also we have a lot of, in the soul versus materialism energy, it's going to connect a lot with families and the family energy patterns. Now, each of us has our own family dynamic, and usually the black sheep of the family is the one that's sitting in the soul. And then you have the ones that are jealous and they're attacking that black sheep oftentimes in the family. But I think on a public view, we're going to see things. It's going to happen particularly in the political arena, because why? We have a lot of family associations in the political and world leader arenas. You've got Joe and Hunter Biden there. You've got the connection between Governor Newsom and Pelosi. You've got husband and wife teams throughout the political sphere. Then you've got the royal families, right? And the siblings that are connected in that area. And so I think we're going to start seeing this upheaval in the family units that is going to be coming out in February. And so it's going to be interesting to see there. There could be one that suddenly is taking a plea bargain for something and then they expose the others. We're going to see this controversy come to the public light. And this is one of the areas we're going to start seeing people turn on each other. Also, as I mentioned before, this aspect of watching associations, because what's going to happen is when we're surrounding ourselves with corrupt people or people making unwise decisions, that's going to bring us crashing down. That's going to bring very strong challenges, that can bring very big collapses in things. And if you are surrounding yourself with wise people, you naturally are creating a realm of protection. So if you're surrounding yourself with people that are coming from an open, a loving space, a compassionate space, they're treating you like a person and not looking at you saying, I'm going to treat you this way or that way because you are or are not wearing a mask type of thing, or because you will or will not get a shot in your arm type of thing. They're just caring about people. They're saying, we need to come together. We need to work on this. This is soul versus corruption type of energy. And so I think it's going to be interesting to see that, because when I look at this kind of energy pattern, I can see where things are going to maybe start imploding on themselves, where this corruption, they're surrounding themselves with people making wise decisions. Well, what's that going to do? That's going to create exposure, especially if they don't have a scapegoat anymore to put it on. I could see a lot of things coming out, even with the impeachment that's coming up. I could see a lot of things that are going to come out with that. There's a lot of different pieces there, because the impeachment is almost like a big trap for the corruption. If they push forward with the impeachment, then they have to admit that Trump is still president, which they don't want to do. And if they admit that, then they have to admit their crimes of inaugurating.
How are they going to get? How are they going to get around that? Because obviously he is. They're saying, okay, well, the official sort of explanation they've given with that, right, is the fact that, well, it's the way of it's the way of trialing a former official for misconduct. But like, if he's a private citizen now, why not go through like a criminal court or something? Why would you go through the impeachment? That's right. I can't seem to get my head around. Why would you go down the impeachment? It's like, would you constitutionally, could you sort of impeach I don't know, for argument's sake, George W. Bush for something, like, he's still alive, so there's no precedent where they've actually used an impeachment on a former president. He's gone now, so if he did incite the riots, which I don't think he did, right? And this is the weird thing when I'm seeing it. I've seen what he said on the thing, and that to me, his son Donald Trump Jr. and Giuliani did say some very provocative things in their speeches, right? And I didn't really see that apart from the thing of fight like hell. But then you saw last year, when you seen Pelosi and a few of the others saying about, I don't understand why they're not burning down more houses and burning down more shops. And I'm thinking, really, it's like you're both as bad as each other. It's almost like that's the kind of, like, I'm looking and going, I'm watching a playground argument here in probably the most powerful house on planet Earth. It's like I'm watching kids. They're putting kids to shame.
Well, and it really is. And if they, take a look and they say, okay, there's so many things, like they're just caught. They're caught almost any direction they go by pushing this impeachment. And even the people that have been against Trump have been saying, we really can't afford to go down this path. And they're probably seen enough of it to realize that they're going to get trapped because, like I said, either they're going to then have to admit that they've illegally inaugurated somebody who was not eligible for the position, or they're going to, there's, and then you start to get down this whole other path. And then if they continue to pursue with the impeachment and say, well, we're going to impeach him anyways, even though we're saying he's not president, now they've violated the Constitution. So now he can have them all charged for violating the Constitution. And it opens a whole other door, because also it gives him a platform where all of your mainstream media will be covering it. And so with that happening, there's all kinds of things that will come out in the process of that impeachment in regards to the elections and other things that can be brought out that the mainstream channels had refused to cover or to broadcast.
Why would you be that stupid? It must just be pure malice.
Well, it is power hungry, and it's this aspect where he's got them in a position now where they believe they've gotten away with things. So now they feel like they're invincible. They feel like they can do whatever they want. They can put through whatever corruption they want. They can tell you whatever lies they want. They can, not follow the Constitution, not follow the laws. There was one point that Biden's trying to change the Constitution, which isn't going to fly well. And so, the people are seeing more and more of these pieces, and they're going, this is insanity. What we're seeing is insanity. And,
Texas have even put a bill in to secede from the union. That's another thing I've heard. It's an actual bill. I can't remember the name of the bill. It's like 1192 something. But they put it in, I think it was Monday last week. They've put it into like a discussion if they can get the votes to and it looks like there's a lot of people, especially in the sort of the old southern belt, right, of the US, the old sort of southern states, that are getting quite pissed off with all this, excuse my language. And I always say about, I've been talking to a good friend of mine, it's like, what's it, sort of way down south in the land of Dixie type thing, and it's like they always said the South will rise again. And you're thinking, do you know what, you could possibly see that happening at the moment, because it's just, you're getting people, workers in, I think it was Wisconsin, that was saying like there's so many of us have been laid off work, literally in the last 2 weeks, our jobs have just gone because of some of the stuff that he's done. It's incredible.
Yeah. Yeah. It's absolute insanity. So it's, they're really setting their own traps. And February's energy talks a lot about this in the codes of of just, when you're surrounding yourself with people making unwise decisions, you're going to have to deal with the consequences of that. It's going to bring some falls in there. And, these are the challenges. They're in some ways, they're not even trying to cover up their lies anymore. There's still a lot of people that can't see into the corruption that's there, that exists, that's going on. And there's some people you're never going to be able to show them. It doesn't matter how much truth and everything you put in front of them, they're not going to acknowledge it for that. So it's challenging in that sense. But yeah, when you look at the people that are saying, hey, I voted for Biden and now I don't have a job, or, he said he was going to get this $2,000 check and now I'm getting $1,400. And now, and it's just, it goes on and on. So all of these lies are starting to catch up. And, we have to remove the people, and we have to start looking at what's really happening, because they like to present things in these packages and say, oh, but it's for the environment, or it's for this, or it's for that. And it really isn't. It's about control. And until we're willing to get down and realize what it's really about, take the players, take the names out of it, and realize the actual actions that are happening, we're not going to be able to get out of the fear. We're going to keep locking ourselves into these restrictions. And people are in this space now, and with February's codes, where there's frustration, there's aspects of restrictions, there's feeling like nothing's happening. But I don't think that that's going to be the case, because we're seeing more and more of this buildup between, where we're going to have to step into the soul self. That is the lesson that we have to get down.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it?
Before the middle of May.
It's like Ian Crane, one of a brilliant researcher, and I hope he's doing well, because Ian's been a huge inspiration on myself, and I know he's been an inspiration on you, Richard. And he always tells this story. He tells this story about, I think it was in 2011, he went to the Himalayas, and there's this tribe in the Himalayas that he sort of paid to go and sort of spend time with. This guy had organised it, and he broke his leg, so he ended up like just sitting at the bottom of the mountain where everyone else went up. And the chief sort of came down and started talking to him, and eventually, about 2 hours later, this translator turned up. So for like 2 hours, this guy was talking to Ian, and he didn't have a clue what was going on. And this translator came, and he said for him to come down the next day. And he said, I might be paraphrasing here, so I'm not sure how entirely accurate I am with the story, but this is the gist of it. Which they basically said that they knew this time was coming. This time that we're in now was coming. And the biggest thing that people need to learn to do is, this could all go away if we all start participating in the process. And rather than deferring our responsibility to each other, to our planet, to the world in which we live, rather than deferring it to a chosen few, that we all start to take a little bit of responsibility for it, and we need to participate. And I am seeing more of that, not as much as I'd like to see. And unfortunately, a lot of that will come out in a really negative way, because people will, as we've seen in several countries now, a lot of it has turned violent, and that's no way, in any way, shape or form, is any violence a way to solve these types of problems. They only exacerbate these types of problems. But, people, I do think that we're going to see more and more people wanting to participate in this in some way, shape or form in the coming years.
Well, I mean, if you think about it, this is going to probably sound a bit harsh, to tell you the truth.
But you do harsh really well, my friend.
I do harsh really well. But Donald Trump was a person, right? All right, as much as he was a celebrity and he was very rich, but he wasn't a politician. And anything he was asked to do, he did. And he did it on a humanistic level, which he built the wall because the police in that area said they couldn't manage it. And he said, "Will the wall do?" and he said human things in tweets, and when he was, in public and in front of the press, he said human things. He called them liars, and it's almost like people would prefer the lie, so they would prefer the politician, and because there's comfort in the lie. And I've noticed this with a few people. They've been ringing me and asking me what's going on in the world, and I've said I give them solutions. If you want to know the truth, there's only one course of action for it, and that's to go and find out for yourself with your own eyes. And I always seem to get the same answer. Oh, can't you do that? Can't you go and find out then and let me know? And I think it's everybody's waiting for something that is always been up to us. And the way this world goes on is up to us. And, it does prove it, because he was just a person. He did really personable things. He did things that a human being in that position, never been a president before, would say and do. And I think, people need to get out of their own way and stop waiting for someone to come and save the day, and do it through action. And, I've helped hundreds and hundreds of people over the years. I've been doing paranormal research and everything, and most of it has just fallen to the wayside. Before I've learned of it, I passed on. But I think it's in your actions. And I notice you said to me, I sometimes I come across quite harsh, like on social media, and that's only because of my dyslexia. But I am quite blunt. I don't think it's not helping anyone. And the thought of someone going through something so dramatic as losing a loved one, and there could be the potential, because that's how I see it, for that person to be tainted by a lie, makes me quite passionate. Really sort of sets fire off in me. And I think, there's got to become a point where we just start taking responsibility ourselves. Yeah. And really seeing that, we just can't go on with this system. This system is not comforting to have someone there who is willing to press a button on your behalf. And I think that's a big mindset in the world. And there's a lot, and you really need to look at how much negativity has built the societies we have. And the people who were at the front of that negativity were given, positions of power. So that mindset they grew up in, and that was passed down, is still in them. And that's the problem. That's the reason. One of the reasons why the world is such a crazy place.
How much of our history is based on warfare?
Yeah, it's like this thing that's happening now. They've always made money in contracts from war. We know this. Half of the people in government have the contracts to make missiles and guns and bombs and bullets. They own the patents. They are the contractors. The banks own them. And and now there's no war. What are they going to do? What do they create? I mean, if any of you are watching this and you know about neoconservatism, and you know that one of their beliefs is, if you want to unite the people, you give them a common enemy. Or if you want to suppress the people, you give them a common enemy. So, it's just we've all. It's going to be very difficult for that ego, that self-preservation, to not pull the reins. And the spiritual self, I did it in a video about meditation. The spiritual self doesn't have a problem with any of the right answers.
And that'll be out Saturday.
Sacrifice, with sacrifice, the spiritual self doesn't have any problem with sacrifice. I mean, if we can't have all these things, these luxuries and all these things we think, this garnish of our lives, if we can go without that to make the future really better, to teach the future something, because they're going to look back. I mean, these people in Parliament, they've got to know that their children are going to look back at them with that just shame, and that's got to mean something. And if it doesn't, and we've got to push forward with it. We've got to try and listen to the spiritual, the light in us, and stop listening to the ego.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's one selfish arsehole, that is the ego. Like he will let some pretty dark things happen for self-preservation, and it's in all of us. There's no sugarcoating it. It's in all of us. That's self-preservation.
Can I raise a point there as well, Rich? Because you just tapped into something which I thought was brilliant, right? Where you said about people saying to you, "Oh, can you look it up and let me know?" It's like, well, actually, that's against the point entirely, because the way I'm, understanding's a three-edged sword. Your side, my side, and the truth. It's up to you to come to your own truth and understanding of it, and not whether that's based on what other people tell you or what you've been able to discern yourself. Like, we can't find the truth about everything. It's just impossible to do. But what you can do is you can find the truth about the things you're passionate about, and you can through that, it'll help you to sort of, through that process, it'll help you to sort of create your own understanding that helps you to empower yourself and empower others. There's a part of that learning process that not just taking what you're given at first value, but actually going on that journey, undertaking that learning process, and sort of like, just, there's so much to be gained from that. There's so much empowerment to be gained from that. There's so much, there's so much from it. It's beyond words. It's beyond words, because of that sort of connection that you'll find connections with new people. It enhances maybe some connections you have with existing friendships. So it affects you on every sort of level of your life. And to defer that by going, "Oh, do you mind going and doing and come and let me know?" Do you know what I mean? It's that kind of, they're missing out as well.
You have to do the process yourself. You don't get the same benefits from the process if somebody else is doing it as if you go through it yourself. And I think that's a key point with what you guys are bringing up in there, and that these pieces where people are at, we can't get lazy. I mean, we've allowed things to get to the point that they're at, and we have the ability to disallow them from continuing to go down this path and get worse and worse and worse. But we're going to have to open our mind. We're going to have to expand. We're going to have to say no to the restrictions that are being placed on us, the confinements that are being placed on us. The soul has to be able to thrive, and that thrives in freedom, not confinement. We need to realize the deeper layers of control that are being implemented under the guise of what's best for you phrases. And again, to come into these aspects and to look and to have some deep conversations with people and say, this is coming up, that's coming up. It's like, gee, they're telling us that we need to wear 2 or 3 masks, but yet they're saying that, the masks don't make any difference, or they're, so it's amazing, how the obvious can be missed, and how they're actually telling us everything that we're doing, but we're listening to maybe something we want to hear, or seeing something that we want to hear instead of what's actually happening. We're listening to somebody saying, "Oh, I won't hurt you, while they put a knife through your chest. It's it's the same principle in there. And we've got to get back to it. We got to look at it. It's it's like people say, well, this can't be done or that can't be done, and it's like, okay, if the Constitution is saying this is the way it is, and people are not following the Constitution, it's not, there's something there to look at. Are you, instead of just believing, well, it's okay, they're justified in not following the Constitution.
That's the entire,
they're not justified.
That's the entire fabric of your republic gone, because that's what's based on. It's based. Exactly. It's based on. If it's not based on that, then it's not based on anything. You know, that's the fundamental principle of any sort of democracy, is that kind of, you know, set of ideals. And I know obviously America has a written one. We don't. A lot of the British one is, I know we have things like the Magna Carta and things, but a lot of ours is set on more precedent. Because we're like what do they call Britain, a constitutional monarchy. I want to show a brief video because of what you said regarding the February energies and things, and just for those watching that may not have actually seen this. It's about 6 minutes because we've kind of talked now. I did have a couple of videos lined up, but I think what we've discussed, I think, kind of takes a bit more precedence, and you guys can take a look back on the channel for the different clips that have led up to this. But I want to show this particular one, and I believe I've got it here. But this is the one that was you did on. It was the 1st of November. So this is before the election. This is before any of this sort of started coming out. And basically, I'm going to show you the second part of this session. And it basically says the exact same thing as what you just did, Anne. So I'm going to cut over to that now. And we'll join you guys back in about 6 or 7 minutes' time. Is that okay?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Do you have a message to give? Should I put one of the other devices on, like reverb or echo? The light is with us, I think that's it. Who am I speaking to? Can you tell me your name? Where have you come from? Prophecy. You said prophecy, huh? Peace. Use the sound in this device to communicate. I speak to you with love. You have a message to give. You have a message to give. Do you want to talk? Let's see.
We are back. Yay! Hello. We are back. Hello. So, we're coming to the end of today's show. Let us know in the chat what you thought of those responses if it was the first time you heard them. That was using the Necrophonic app. So, basically, that doesn't have a connection to the internet. The point that Richard was doing that session was not asking about anything. At the point of doing that, we didn't realise there was a problem or anything else going on surrounding this. You were having activity in your house, Rich, and that's why you did the session.
Yeah, I wanted to know who was in my house and causing, a bit of paranormal activity, because it did get to a very strong point. We were having sort of like things being moved, knocked over, seeing stuff. It wasn't just myself seeing it. It was my partner, there was her son, there was my partner's sister, it was my kids, and they were witnessing it. And that's what that session was about. And the fact they came out with all that about, I mean, the crazy thing is, it's the fact they came out about that in America. And
it was you doing it, not me, because normally I'm in the room whenever someone weird, crazy like that comes out. I'm in the room. So for me, it was like a session without me there. And I know that sounds weird, but because I'm the guy who transcribes it a lot of the time, I do ask, is it me that's having an effect on it?
Mm. Yeah, I know. I just asked. I was asking who was in my house. What did they want? Did they have a message? That was the message they give. So I think obviously, and I got to be honest, I think everybody. I think it was such a focus point of attention that everybody like who in our field, they thought if the bad guys get taken down, then all the bad guys get taken down. It was sort of going to create the sort of snowball effect, and I think that's the reason why it came through the box like it did, because there was so much riding on it. There was so much faith and hope riding on that moment, because they've had a hand in the darkness of this world for so long that it does and they're very clever. It's like anything, they're very clever. They know how to manipulate the system. That's what they wouldn't be in the position they are in if they didn't know how. So
And what's your thoughts on that? As we have had a few people in the chat say we don't let you speak as much as we should.
Well,
I don't know how you put up with
a lot
us.
of these shows, so yeah.
I don't know how.
You're balancing a bit today.
I think you actually probably prefer the break this time round, because normally it's like, I want a glass of water, guys. Would you like to step in? And we're like sat there going, no, I know you're hanging on every word here, laughing. Please, I'd like a cup of tea.
To have different insights coming in, but yeah, it's very interesting, and it really aligns, so much with what's going on with the codes, what we're going to see coming in. I think in February, again, more things coming out. One thing about the truth is you cannot keep the truth hidden forever. And as they are starting to snowball, because, what started with one little lie that could be covered up, now these lies are not being able to be covered up. They're exposing Twitter and they're exposing Facebook, and they have the proof of where they've said, to interfere in the elections, for example. They've got the proof there now. They can't hide from it. So, gradually what happens is when you remove certain factors out, corruption just turns on itself, because that's all it knows. And so I'm always very excited when the truth does come out, because I feel like as hard as that can be for people, as challenging as it can be for people, that at least it gives people the opportunity to do some healing. It gives people the chance to move forward. It gives them choice. It gives them the freedom to make the decisions that they need to make in their life. And February is not going to be all easy. We oftentimes think, well, if the truth comes out or this gets exposed, that it's going to be an easy ride, or it's going to be just all rosy and good, kind of like all the people who thought, when we go through these certain spiritual transformations on the earth, or these portals open, that all of a sudden they're going to wake up and all the bad stuff is going to be gone. But we forget that sometimes we have to deal with some of that crap while we are moving. Part of the moving into the better stuff is dealing with the crap along the way. And in February, one of the things the codes talk about is we are likely to see people literally going crazy, literally losing their minds. And this connects to aspects of mind scrambling and mind control that will be increased during this month. We're going to see a likelihood of increase in crimes and murders and suicides and shootings. Those are all in there, so we can expect those crime levels to go up. Now, when I see that in connection with some of the Council of 12 stuff, it's like, yeah, something's going to come back around that's going to shake stuff up here. And really what this is about is when our mind starts getting scrambling and they start using these programs and they start using these mind control tactics on people, it's really an aspect of getting us to try to turn our power over willingly to them through their lies. And what they're really pushing for in this month in particular is how many people can they get to turn over their soul. And we might think that this is just some big dramatic thing, but this happens in the small pieces, such as being willing to lie, such as being willing to go on the attack of somebody because they hold a different view than what you hold in things. It's kind of like a while back, a few months ago, when we had the mayor in Chicago and a couple of other political heads, and they were going out saying, if you see somebody that supports Trump, you go out and you beat them up and you do this and you do that. Okay, that's not going to work, because that's going to be out of integrity, and that is literally selling your soul. Once you start to take those actions, you're selling your soul over. So you're giving them the power. You're feeding power into the corruption. So we're really going to have to watch, I would say, those pieces. And again, we've got a lot of aspects that are going to be coming up in the family units. So I'm really going to be looking at, what's going to happen in those royal families, what's going to be happening in the political families, again, between maybe Hunter and his dad, and seeing what happens there. So, we're going to have to be careful, because this month has, again, it's got a lot to do with breakdown or breakthrough. And so you're going to have to face things to get to the breakthrough. And yet there's a lot of people that aren't going to be able to probably handle it, and they're going to be breaking down. So I like to put that warning out there, not to scare anybody, but to give people a heads up that we are at that breaking point. And that breaking point, to me, in many ways is actually very hopeful, even though it's very sad to see people go through that. It's also very hopeful because people are going to hit that point where enough is enough and we're not going to tolerate this anymore. Now, does that mean we have to go to war? No, because the banking families would love to have another war come out to cover up for other things, or to use as an excuse to do things. And so we really want to consider, how can we do this from the soul self? How can we do it with integrity? And how can we stay focused on the breakthrough of things? So that's kind of like my pieces in there. And when you showed that clip from the Council of 12, I really felt like, okay, we probably got some more stuff coming out this month. And it could very easily be, connected to impeachment trials or things like that. But we're already seeing it. We're already seeing the parties, and this is what, we've tried to be warned of, and even Trump said this numerous times. There's corruption on both sides. They've infiltrated both parties. This isn't about parties. This is about fighting corruption.
So when does the impeachment trial supposed to start? Is it the 8th of Feb?
I don't know the exact date, but I have in my head somewhere around the end of the first week of this month. So it's coming up.
I think Mitch McConnell, I seen a video. Mitch McConnell apparently said it was going to be next week. So, and is he still like the controller of the Senate, or has that changed now?
Yes. There's so many stories out there. It's hard to tell whether they truly have control or whether they're just playing the roles right now to, expose things. They say oftentimes that it's not that things haven't happened the way they were stated they were going to happen.
He's like a yo-yo, Mitch McConnell. One minute you're saying one thing.
Open, a certain illusion going to continue to create greater exposure in there. But he is. Pelosi's still in there for the moment. But what's very interesting is we are seeing, again, more and more motions being taken to remove people that are heavily corrupt. So I think it's gonna, as I say, be objectively in observation. Don't see just what you want to see, but look at what's really happening.
I want to state this just in case anyone does look back at this and try and manipulate it. Any violence, except for obviously self-defense, if someone's coming at you with a baseball bat or something, doesn't solve anything. And if anyone is trying to, anyone watches this and tries to sort of say it's about inciting violence and stuff like that, I don't believe. Jesus Christ, I'm a partially blind guy from South Wales. I've never been in a fight physically in my life, and I do not stand for violence. And a lot of people said to me about, there was a poster went up the other day about Black Lives Matter again and Nobel Peace Prize, and I was like, a friend said to me, why have you gone right wing? And I'm like, look, right wing, left wing, same bird. If I take a piece of paper, right, I'll show you now. Let's give you an idea. I've got this'll do. Book on the Apocalypse, that'll do, right? If I say, that is left wing, that is, I'm not going to go for anything, that is right wing, put it together, communism, fascism, basically it's the same points on the spectrum. It's nothing to do with left wing, right wing. I felt it was just unethical to give that organisation a Nobel Peace Prize now, given the amount of upheaval that there has been and surrounding them. And I felt that would be a slap in the face to all those people who had their property and shops and that ruined, etc. You know, give it to the people that stood up and peacefully tried to make change within what happened last year. And, you know, that's that thing. It's like people are saying, oh, you're left wing, you're right wing. No, you stand up for what's right. There's certain things on the left I agree with. There's certain things on the right I agree with. There's certain things on the left I vehemently oppose, and there's other things on the right I really vehemently oppose. At the end of the day, it's not about where you sit on this sort of imaginary line of politics. It's about what's right, and it's about doing what's right for you and for the people you're connected to, for your loved ones, and doing what's right, as you say, Anne, with regards to love and acting in accordance with love. And for anyone who finds that they come under pressure, because there's a lot of pressured energy around at the moment, just that love is what, for me, is what guides me through. And I feel that the more we show that love, the more we talk to each other, the more we exchange our points of view, and the more we're willing to listen to one another, which is the key thing, I think, then the more solutions we can come to. Any final words from you guys?
You know,
yeah,
I
I'd like
wanted...
to say,
Go on,
sorry,
Rich.
Sam, can I,
No,
I
sorry.
just want to say, you're on about pressure. You're on about pressure. We are talking about politics, right? And we're being given it by aliens, Jack. Right, that's pressure. we're given political views by aliens through a box and ghosts. If you were under more pressure than that, then I feel for you. It just look for the truth, and it just
I love you, Rich.
No, sorry. When he said pressure, I was like, pressure? Which isn't good. It counts to the 12 talking to a radio. It is. I mean, I never thought. If somebody told me this 10 years ago that you'd be having a party political broadcast by the council of 12, I would have just gone. I'd have quit. But you just got to look for, you know. I think you just got to look for what is saying. What's saying what creates a better world, and that's the truth. What creates a better world, and it kind of sums it up like that. If something incites hatred, if something incites divide, if something incites for you to be punished about the past, if anything that goes against, you know, love and truth and unity and doesn't bring us together, it is really not good for us. And it's just as simple as that. It's just as simple as that. Like. And sorry, I've had my moment. You go on, Anne.
I think it's brilliant.
I think I'm right on the same page, I think, with you guys, really, in so many ways. I don't condone violence. It is not the path of the codes. It is not anything that we should be supporting. And it doesn't matter who's doing it. We have to look at it. Those people that are supporting wars, we need to stand up against that. We need to make sure we're keeping the lines of communication open with each other, even if we have different viewpoints and different opinions on things, because the more we shut down our communications with each other, the more vulnerable we become to brainwashing, the more vulnerable we become to the programs and to being fed lies. And just because, 99.9% of the population is saying you should jump off a cliff, that doesn't mean you should jump off of a cliff. Just because some political leader says you should go out and harass people or do this or that, doesn't mean that you should do it. And, here again, we've we've seen these straight calls for things, and it shouldn't matter where you're standing on the spectrum. It's about standing up for what's right. It's about standing up for the truth. It's about standing up for having the freedom to share different opinions on things and to have these interactions. And these are the bigger pieces that we just can't afford to let go of. You know, we can afford to let go of a lot of material things in life, but we cannot afford to let go of these basic fundamental soul pieces, because when we do, you know, that's it. You know, that's kind of game over when you choose to just say, I'm not going to support the divine presence or God's presence, or, you know, Allah, or whatever your word is for God and divine presence. Again, it comes back to this integrity piece, and the codes talk about it a lot. And it's about operating in integrity. And it's, you know, it's not saying, oh, well, that person voted for so-and-so, so I'm going to leave them on the side of the road stranded to freeze to death. No, you give them a helping hand because they're a fellow human being who's in, you know, a serious realm of trouble. And we need to rise up together against what is, you know, squashing the divine presence. And this is where we're really going to move forward in things. And the fear is part of that aspect. We have to stand up against those that are promoting fear in things. It's one thing to look at truth and reality. It's something else to live in the fear and promote it and use it to control people. So really question everything. I say it a lot, but do it. Really be an observation, really listen, look beyond the initial words of things, you know, understand some of those underlying pieces there, and
do it on both sides. You know, don't
do
just
it on both sides.
Don't just look at people who are in the alternative media and go, oh, well, they're in the alternative media, so they must be speaking truth. No, you know, people in the alternative media are more than capable of lying, because they have vested interest themselves in that. And you have to look at it for yourself.
And people that know me know I call out people in the truth movement. I call out people, you know, in the spiritual movement. I'll call them out because, you know, I get as frustrated with people putting out propaganda in the truth movement as I get frustrated with people putting out propaganda that are in the corruption. And you know, either way, it's like, no, don't just be spewing this stuff out there. You need to base it with fact. And when you promote certain things, it doesn't matter whether you're part of the truth movement or not. If you can't back it up with facts, then you're doing no different than what the corruption is doing. So absolutely, you know, look at it. Don't just say, oh, somebody made a post of it. Well, no, where can you verify it? Can you verify it through some sort of legitimate source out there?
And that's what we are doing. You know, when if we put this out there now and nothing happens out of this impeachment, we'll be seriously questioning where this information is coming from. Because by giving us that message, they've really laid it on the line there.
I'd say I post stuff on social media now and again that just to see if anybody is aware enough that they've gone to the trouble to look at it, and they've gone, oh, Rich, this is completely out of date, or this is complete nonsense, or anything like that. And I go, yay, he looked at it, because I posted some things and people have just gone, that's great, that. But you know, I do that now and again. That's just to see if anybody's actually paying attention. I do, you know, I am a bit of a bugger for that, but that's just to spark the conversation more than anything. But yeah, I mean, it is, you know, just, you know, we keep saying it. I've heard you say it so many times, Anne. We've just got to come at this with love, you know, and just come at it. We've got to. Everything else has failed, you know. This is doing the opposite to love is the reason we're in this mess in the first place. And you know, it's time. It's time.
How you live, how you behave, how you treat people, the actions you take are going to speak louder than most anything. And if those are congruent with what you are saying and speaking, now you're starting to hold some real power. And this is the thing. I find so many people have been fed so many lies that they have walls built up against me, and then I'm nice to them, which is just the way I am. and they're like, it just, you can see it. You can see the confused look on their face, like, I've been told to hate you, but you're so nice. And, you know, those actions, and we have to remember, again, it's not just about all these big political circles and world leaders and celebrities and all of that. I mean, those are the things that we notice because they're in the news, but it comes right down to our own life. And it comes, you know, right down to those individual pieces. And you have the power to change it in your world. You know, you might think you're influencing one person, but you might influence 20 or 30 other people out there. And it's about, you know, sitting down and having the discussions. Well, you know, I wonder why they are asking you to do this when they're saying that, or, you know, different things, and just letting the discussion be open, because that's where you're going to open your mind up and get out of the walls and the barriers and the boxes. And once we step out of that, we step more into creativity, which is something Jared talked about at the beginning of the show. And when we're in creativity, we're running in a certain amount of alignment with, you know, when that creativity is coupled with integrity and compassion, then we're running in alignment with divine presence. So, you know, you really can't go wrong in that alignment.
Yeah.
And thank you for coming. Thank you very much for coming on the show. Is there any final points, guys?
No, I think we said it all in regards to this. I think
brilliant. Thank you, guys.
Looking forward to next month.
Next month,
next month, seeing what happens in the next month.
Please.
And we're going to be sat here now. Nothing's happened. We're like, why were we told all this stuff was going to happen? Guys, thank you very much. We'll speak to you again soon. There are going to be more. We are trying to work more on the website and getting the website and stuff done. So there may be a little bit fewer videos coming up in the next week or so. But there's lots of videos recorded. But we're getting everything set up now so we can launch on some other platforms as well. So thank you very much, everyone who has joined this channel. Thank you for your support. There's, you know, we talk about a lot of different things on this channel. We cover a lot of ground because that's just the way the journey's been. And, you know, I hope what you guys, you'll take something from this discussion tonight. And I thank you for sticking with us. Love and light, para peeps. We'll see you in the next video.
Like para peeps.
Take care.
Night, everybody.